Since the Syrian people have been standing strong against this conspiracy. It's also St. Patrick's Day, which is of course the day of the Irish, which is the background that I'm from, and the Irish people struggled for 800 years against the same enemy that the Syrian people are struggling against today. I'd like to start first of all with the words of a Syrian man. This Syrian man, he said, and this may be familiar to many of you, he said, "Our awareness is the rock that the colonizers will break on. The awareness of our people has been big. The awareness has been our guarantee for every successful movement in the history of this country. Colonization will never win. It has not won before, and it will not win now in misleading our people. Notice this campaign that is fueled by foreign media channels. Notice this psychological campaign that targets the self-confidence of our people, that targets the people's belief in their leadership. Nevertheless, our people are bigger and much more noble than that. Our people have big ambitions, big understanding, big in their struggle. Misleading media will never get to our people. Through misleading newspapers or through any misleading medium, they will not affect our people's determination or seriousness through their lies." Those words describe exactly the events that the Syrian people are living through today, but they are words that were spoken decades ago by the father of President Bashar al-Assad, Hafez al-Assad. For truth has been this wars, and the war against Libya's, and the war against now Iran, and the war against Iraq, and every other imperialist war's first casualty. The media have tried to have us believing that the greatest enemies of democracy are promoting it, that an armed insurrection that targets the people, is in fact a people's uprising. That the enemies of the Syrian people is the Syrian government, which on the contrary for decades and up until today has protected the people from Zionist and imperialist aggression. While the media sheds crocodile tears for thousands of imaginary victims of the Syrian government, providing us with no names, no identities, no evidence of mass graves that would be required for the kinds of massacres that they have accused the Syrian government of, the Syrian people mourn their brothers and sisters, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers and friends who are members of the security forces and the army and the civilians that have been targeted and that have been named and identified as martyrs at the hands of insurgents who have received their tools to kill from Israel, Qatar, France, Britain, the United States and their allies. Today, the Syrian people are mourning more of their loved ones following the carnage that was unleashed in civilian areas of Damascus thanks to intelligence and weapons provided by the West and their puppet states in the Gulf. So while the Syrian army and security are portrayed as some monstrous entity, it is days like today where we can clearly see how brave they are. That despite the dangers they face, they continue to heroically put their lives on the line in the knowledge that they are prime targets to defend not just their country's independence, but also, as former Russian Joint Chiefs of Staff Leonid Ivashev said, to prevent the global advance of fascism. Just like the sons and daughters of the Libyan people who I came to know in the Libyan security forces and armed volunteers who were ruthlessly murdered by cowardly pilots in NATO planes and Apache helicopters for heroically choosing to sacrifice their blood to protect their dignity and the sovereignty of their nation. Are we so willfully brainwashed that the media can fool us into thinking that this is an uprising led by disgruntled Syrians just because they have some Arabs, many of whom are not Syrian, who are doing their dirty work for them. Are we really fooled so quickly after they spun the same lie when they used some Libyan rebels to say that Libya was facing an internal uprising, despite all the vital work was being done by NATO, which happily did not lose one soldier as they stayed safely in the sky, not once having to face the victims of their bombs? Are we so brainwashed that despite that even in this generation, never mind the countless imperialist wars over recent centuries, we have not learned that all the West's interventions have brought in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya and elsewhere is not democracy, human rights or freedom, but millions of martyrs, millions of orphans, millions of children born with deformities, millions of refugees, instability, destroyed economies, weak states and abject poverty. And the people protesting not far from here to bring these tragedies to Syria, they say they want democracy. So if they want democracy, why don't they participate in democracy and go and vote in the Syrian elections on May the 7th? If they want peace, why do they refuse to talk and instead beg NATO to come and bomb their own people like the Libyan rebels with whom they are working? Do they want to turn Damascus into Sirte or Aleppo into Beni Walid? Ask the people who remain in those cities if they are enjoying freedom. If they are against tyranny, then why do they embrace the greatest tyrants on this earth, the NATO powers and the Qatari royal family, the likes of Hamid al-Khalifa, who has grown fat off the wealth that he has not yet handed over to the West? And what do they have to offer apart from getting rid of Assad and all that he represents? Where is the constitution that they propose? Maybe their British friends have told them that Britain doesn't have a constitution and so they don't need one either. They say they will offer the Syrian people freedom, but what does freedom mean to them? What will happen to the universal education and healthcare system that the Syrian people enjoy that we don't even have here in Britain? What will happen to the rights of the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Syria if these rebels come to power on the back of support from the Palestinians' enemy, the Zionists? What will happen to the many minorities that up until today have lived in harmony and have had their rights protected? This so-called opposition cannot even show unity amongst each other in firing their weapons. How will they keep the country united? Again, if they want freedom and unity, then why do they hold the flag introduced under French colonial occupation? The flag of division. And why do they reflect the current Syrian flag, which is the flag of Arab unity? Do they want to send their people to colonial backwardness? Yes! If they want freedom, then why are they working with the enemies of Arab freedom? The Zionists and the so-called Islamist movements like the Muslim Brotherhood and Hizb ut-Tahrir, who have colluded with the Zionists and enjoy their support. These are the forces that have prevented and brutally fought against the dream of true Arab heroes like Jamal Abdel Nasser, who dedicated his life to Arab unity in the knowledge that in states that the imperialists created to be weak and ungovernable, that Arab unity was the prerequisite for the Arab people. And I'm going to wrap up soon, but I just want to remind us of some words of Jamal Abdel Nasser, but replace Egypt with Syria. Jamal Abdel Nasser said, "In these decisive days in the history of mankind, these days in which truth struggles to have itself recognized in international chaos, where powers of evil domination and imperialism have prevailed, Syria stands firmly to preserve her sovereignty. Your country stands solidly and staunchly to preserve her dignity against imperialistic schemes of a number of nations who have uncovered their desires for domination and supremacy. In these days and in such circumstances, Syria has resolved to show the world that when small nations decide to preserve their sovereignty, they will do that all right. And then when these small nations are fully determined to defend their rights and maintain their dignity, they will undoubtedly succeed in achieving their ends. And Nasser was right. 12 months after the conspiracy against Syria came into effect, we are seeing that the opposition, no matter how much money and support they receive from the most powerful forces on earth, are unable to defeat the heroic Syrian army. And despite them having the biggest media channels at their service, as Hafiz al-Assad said, the misleading media will not get to the Syrian people. Having fought in every war against the Zionists, the Syrian people know very clearly who their enemy is. And here today we stand, I'm very honored to stand here in solidarity with those millions of people who went into the streets a couple of days ago across Syria in defense of their country and national dignity. And while the media ignores thousands who have been martyred by imperialism's proxies on the ground, who today claimed more lives, we honor them. And we stand in solidarity with the Iran-Syria-Hezbollah axis, which is now on the front line, resisting imperialism and its greatest ally in the region, the Zionist state of Israel. Allah Surya Basharu Bas.
Thank you.